I love the Destiny franchise. The art design is the best I've seen in gaming. Every environment, heck every frame of the game looks like it could be a painting. The zones, missions, strikes, maps, and raids, when paired with the amazing visuals of the enemies and your guardians, is just unlike any other game. Whenever I play Destiny, I feel inspired to create. For me as a writer, that's one of the highest praises I can give a game. When you add with all that the superb enemy design, the crisp gameplay, and the overall sandbox design, Destiny 2 can suck you in with the strength of a vortex. So, this video comes from a place of love for me. It comes from seeing such great potential, and knowing Destiny could be greater. Destiny 2's been getting a lot of flack in the headlines lately, so this might seem like a bit of a dogpile, but I wanted to make this video before I even heard about all that drama. You see, even though I'm a YouTuber that focuses on storytelling in games, Destiny was never a story game for me. I started playing at the launch of Destiny 1, way back in 2014, and the story was universally panned as being abysmal. So I didn't bother looking much into it. I didn't feel much need to look into it either. The art design and gameplay carried the experience for me. However, with Lightfall approaching, the expansion which will cap off the last decade of storytelling, I wanted to do a storytelling dive into the game, as I've done with others like Halo or Spider-Man. But the thing is, Destiny 2 isn't really a cohesive story anymore. For everything else the game does well, even amazingly, I can't say that. Some of you might expect me to start going on about a confusing or nonsensical plot, or flat characters, or other odd story choices. However, we can't even go that far. The problem is much more deeply rooted than that, and that problem can be summarized with one phrase: content vaulting. What is content vaulting, you ask? Well, it's pretty simple. Destiny 2 is currently on year 6 of content. The first 2 years of campaign content, comprised of the Red War, the Curse of Osiris, Warmind, and Forsaken, have all been stripped out of the game. Those 4 campaigns are completely gone now. Imagine highlighting a Word document and hitting the delete button. Vanished into the ether. What you're left with is the year 3 through 6 campaign content. Along with this is a new story questline called New Light, which introduces new players to the game with a pat on the butt and sends them on their way. Some of you probably knew where I was headed with this video as soon as it started. Deleting content that your audience has expressly paid for is ethically questionable, even if it is legally in the clear. I don't even know about that, but you'd be better off asking a lawyer. It was a controversial decision, to put it lightly. Bungie, the game developers, cited technical limitations that necessitated the content removal. Personally, it is the most anti-consumer move that I've seen a game company pull off. But either way, this is where we are. This topic's been talked about almost to death, and I'm just one along a long line to talk about it. However, I still think I have something worthwhile to say on it. I think of games as pieces of art first, which may be my first mistake. Call me naive, I guess. But I see games as this amazing tapestry of narrative, gameplay, and art combined into a unique interactive package. I want to view Destiny 2 as this cohesive work as well, but the content that's left over after the vaulting isn't cohesive. It's damaged the game far past what I think a lot of people know. So that's what this video is going to look into. We're going to look at Destiny 2 as it exists today and see how these removals have rendered it a husk. To demonstrate this, I spun up a new character to embark on the New Light campaign. I'm a hunter main, so I decided to try out a Titan. With our character created, the game kicks off with an introductory cutscene. And this cutscene is actually really good. It delivers the backstory of Destiny in a clear and concise way, with compelling animation and a great narrator. Each of the game's main enemy factions is introduced, with snappy one-sentence summaries of their goals and general personality. The exposition doesn't bore you. With the way the music swells and the intensity of the narration, you instead feel pumped to enter this world and take on this opposition. So yeah, high marks on this intro narrative. You might have thought this would be me entirely dogging on the game, but I try to call a spade when I can. Don't worry, we'll get into the negatives pretty quickly. The Guardian is revived by his ghost near the ruins of the Cosmodrome, and quickly sets about getting through the Cosmodrome and fighting fallen enemies. The player is introduced to the game's mechanics and all that good stuff. We come across a fellow Guardian named Shaw. His fire team is missing and he needs backup. Our Guardian offers to help, and with that, the first mission of New Light is complete. Not bad. I think it's a decent initial intro, although a tad bit on the unimaginative side. You're not exactly sitting on the edge of your seat in the Cosmodrome. but we can overlook that. But here's where my problems really began. You see, I took a break after this recording to eat dinner. When I logged back with my new Titan, I wasn't brought to where I was left off. I wasn't even presented with the orbit menu where I could select to continue my quest. Instead, upon logging back in, I was forced into the introduction cutscene for Lightfall. Lightfall again being the latest expansion release for the game. This cutscene summarizes many of the events leading up to Lightfall. I mean, I can't express how bad this is if you want to experience the story. This isn't just a summary of the vaulted content, it's a summary of the expansion so you can still play like Witch Queen. The game is essentially spoiling itself for me. It's as if it couldn't care less about me experiencing the prior content in the game. It's all about the now. Imagine if you started watching a TV show. After the first episode, Netflix forces you to watch the story summary that leads up to the latest season. Aren't you killing all the suspense and interest in watching the seasons before that final one? I think this goes to the general philosophy of Destiny 2 with its content vaulting. The old content doesn't matter. It's all about the new, but it's at the expense of getting to experience the prior content fully. Worse yet, this exact thing happened again next time I booted up the game. I was again forced into another quest. The Descent is the first mission of the latest seasonal content, Season of the Deep. Season of the Deep takes place after Lightfall. It's the current live content as of making this video. Destiny 2 couldn't even bother to let me finish the latest expansion before shuttling me into the new content. I could bang on about this point all day, but let's keep things moving. Let's get back to New Light. And even finding the New Light quest again is a bit of a trial. It's way more difficult than it should be to find the introductory questline of a game. If you're a new player, I could easily imagine you getting lost and not knowing where to go. Anyway, assuming all that goes well, we're back with Shaw trying to find his missing team. The rest of his team unfortunately didn't meet a happy ending. They were killed by the Hive Wizard Navota. Shaw decides it's too dangerous and he doesn't want anyone else to get hurt, so he hunts down Navota without our help. You can imagine this isn't the greatest idea. We hunt him down and save him from Navota, but she gets away. With that, we take a brief respite from hunting Navota and we head to the tower, which is essentially Guardian HQ, to get acquainted with the Guardian leaders. This is a good time for me to, as always, shill my book. Along with doing YouTube, I'm also a science fiction writer. I have a passion for stories, and I'm really proud of my Northfield series. It's a post-apocalyptic journey following Mark Northfield, a complex man who grapples with the moral grayness in such a hard, harsh world. He is blackmailed into assassinating a target, but little does he know, his target holds the key to saving the world. The third book, Storm Warning, is officially up for pre-order. It would really mean a lot to me if you checked out the series and pre-ordered the latest book. Pre-orders are critical for novels because Amazon uses them to gauge interest and determine how much to push the book onto others. So pre-ordering helps me a ton, even past just the sale. My dream is to have the series rank on the Amazon bestseller list one day. Either way, thank you for all the support. It really does mean a lot. Okay, back to the tower. We're taken on a tour of the Guardians' headquarters and get introduced to the important NPCs that play a big part in the story, as well as just a big part in gameplay mechanics. We'll visit the tower often during our duties as a Guardian, picking up bounties or purchasing goods from these people. In isolation, these introductions are fine. It's a smooth way of getting the player acquainted with the characters they'll be interacting with for story or gameplay progression. Although it is a little boring, it follows a pattern of New Light. Competent but bland. Here, though, is where the threads really start to unravel, and you can see the damage caused by the content vaulting. This quest is instance. That means this tower is isolated from the rest of the game world, much like a story mission. So in that sense, it's static. It's frozen in time, so to speak. This isn't the constantly updated tower that you'll be visiting throughout your playtime in Destiny 2. It makes for a very discombobulating experience the next time you visit the tower, and it's completely changed without any explanation. The worst offender of this is the Traveler. The Traveler is the floating orb in the background of the last city, and is very important lore-wise, heavily associated with the Guardian's light. Ikora even speaks about the Traveler during this quest. But the next time I visited the tower, the Traveler was just gone. This important element of the lore, pointed out during the quest even, is just not there anymore. Again, this just speaks to how the content vaulting has left scars across the game. This makes Destiny 2 feel like disparate sections of content, stitched together with the thinnest of threads. There's another example I want to use from this quest. It's my biggest example, and it's the one I'm going to bang on about for a significant part of this video. And that example is Cade 6. During this mission, your ghost laments the loss of Cade 6, the Hunter Vanguard.
You may be wondering who leads the hunters. See, we lost Cade 6, our hunter vanguard, a while back. Killed by a man named Uldren Sov. It was a difficult time. Now no hunter wants to take his place.
Cade 6 is a fan favorite character in Destiny. He may be the fan favorite. Played a large part in the original Red War campaign, as well as the expansions leading up to Forsaken. He played a big part in Destiny 1 too, but we'll keep the context of this video to the second game. This all led up to the Forsaken expansion, which started off with Cade 6's death. In fact, all of the marketing focused on this. Bungie knew Cade 6 was a fan favorite. The entire Forsaken storyline is about getting revenge or justice for a character that all the fans cared about. Like I said earlier, I didn't pay much attention to Destiny 2's story at the time, but even I paused when playing Forsaken and seeing this cutscene. His final cutscene is just tragic and noble and exemplifies him perfectly. But none of this content is in the game anymore. This short line by the Ghost is what we get in place of it. A few lines about how Cade 6's death was a difficult time. This one I feel personally robbed by. I missed out by not paying much attention to Destiny 2's story at the time. I wanted to rectify that by playing through the entire game and diving really deep into it. But I just can't do that anymore. Whatever Cade 6's death meant to the greater Destiny community, it can't mean that to me. Sure, I could catch up by watching all the game's cutscenes. I could watch someone play through all of Destiny 2's vaulted campaigns. I could get a better understanding of why Cade 6 was so loved, and maybe even come to like him myself. But that's just not the same as playing it for myself. How can it be? Games are an interactive medium, and that is one of their greatest storytelling strengths. A lot of the connection is that it's your guardian who journeys with Cade 6 through highs and lows. Having that relationship abstracted by a YouTube screen robs it of that. It's the difference between watching a movie for yourself versus having someone explain the plot. No matter what, something is lost in translation. I'll expand upon this point later with another analogy, but we'll keep it moving for now. We finish up the New Light quest by taking down Navota and getting justice for Shah's fire team. It's nothing remarkable or offensive, so I don't have all that much to say on it. New Light concludes with a final quest to retrieve a weapon from one of Cade 6's stashes. Again, this is the intro set of missions, and all we have about Cade 6 is our ghost passing remarks. The quest doesn't have any significance to us, because we don't know Cade 6. With that, New Light is at an end. Destiny 2 is done escorting us, even though I can't say it's done a bang-up job so far. So, where from here? Let's say I'm a new player, and I'm fully bought into experiencing Destiny 2's story. I've purchased all the expansions on Steam, and I'm ready to go. Where would I start? Well, probably the closest thing to the beginning, which at this point is the Year 3 expansion Shadowkeep. Let's fire it up. As a new player, you might have difficulty finding where the Shadowkeep missions even are, or that it's the first expansion available. Again, Destiny 2 doesn't feel interested in shuttling through the game in any sort of linear fashion. But we make our way to Shadowkeep and start off the first mission. It starts with a very vague cutscene of Eris Morn, a character we haven't really been properly introduced to, traveling through a cave and unveiling a red shadow thing. Then our guardian is airdropped onto the moon to fend off a hive invasion. Zavala tells us to investigate and says not to let the atrocities of Crota haunt you. I hopefully don't need to explain how this just isn't enough content to get going, especially as a new player. The first cutscene just doesn't make sense to the uninitiated. You're all of a sudden on the moon rather than Earth, there's mention to characters you don't know, and you're sent to blasting without much pretext. Again, you could easily figure all this backstory out with a quick Google search or YouTube video, but you shouldn't have to. As the player, you get a clear sense that this narrative does not nicely mesh with what we just played from New Light. This isn't a natural progression of a narrative, and that isn't fixed by being caught up to speed with lore videos. The confusion doesn't relent throughout the mission. It ends with a nightmare summoning of Crota. Your ghost acts shocked by his appearance, and this results in you as the player feeling like you missed out on something.
Crota? But he's dead.
Crota, for what it's worth, is a raid boss from the first Destiny. When you think about this first Shadowkeep mission as many players' first story content after New Light, I don't think it makes sense to have raid characters appear in the first mission, given how raids are endgame content. But again, this is because Shadowkeep was never meant to be the first campaign content players played. But that's the role it serves now. Maybe I'm wrong on that and I'm missing something. Maybe there is content post New Light that you should play before Shadowkeep. But if it exists, I'm not aware of it. I probably put around 200 hours into Destiny 2 across my various accounts. That doesn't make me a seasoned vet by any means with this franchise, But if even I don't know of that content, I think it's even further evidence of the issues I'm describing. This problem is even further exacerbated because expansion campaigns aren't the only content that's vaulted. Every season, new campaign missions are released, which are promptly removed from the game at the end of said season. That means there are gaps of story content between the expansions, which some players get to experience, while others have to be content with Googling. And to iterate on the point, yes, you can Google all this information and get up to speed. But it's different than getting to experience it for yourself. This is the best analogy I've thought of. Let's say you have a painting, and then pieces of that painting are cut out and placed somewhere else. In this analogy, the painting that remains is the Destiny 2 game, while the cutout sections are the removed parts that can now only be viewed via wikis or YouTube. Sure, you can go out and experience every piece of Destiny 2 in the actual game and outside of it, and by looking at the various pieces by themselves, you can start to put together what the whole painting looks like in your head. But you're still never going to look at that full painting intact. And it just isn't the same. Hopefully that analogy made sense, but that's how I feel about Destiny 2. Someone may say that Destiny 2 is a live service game. It's a living, breathing experience that constantly evolves, and that's part of the magic. To experience something, you have to be there in that current moment, and there's a specialness to that. I don't know. After everything I pointed out in this video, I think it's clear that I don't think that trade-off is worth it. There are living, breathing games out there that have a similar way of storytelling, but which handle their content a lot better. A clear example is Final Fantasy XIV. There are probably other games you could list, but this is the one I'm most familiar with. Final Fantasy XIV releases big story expansions, followed by periodic releases of smaller segments of story quests. That's pretty identical to how Destiny releases big expansions, followed by quest lines delivered during seasons. The thing is though, Final Fantasy XIV keeps all the quests in-game. In order to get to the latest content, you have to play through the prior expansion content in between them. You could criticize that, but I think at the very least, it lets all players experience the story, both old and new. Destiny 2 could have that same model. They could release expansions and seasonal story quests, but leave all that content in the game for players to enjoy. If Final Fantasy XIV can do it, I don't see any reason Destiny 2 couldn't in principle. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the reason Bungie cited for content vaulting is technical limitations with their engine. They essentially couldn't add more content without removing the old. But for me, that's just not a good enough reason. I don't doubt the limitations exist, but I don't think any limitation is great enough to justify eviscerating your own game under any context. And I mean eviscerate in a literal sense. They tore the guts out. If the technical situation was truly so dire, they should have shifted over to Destiny 3 and put all the new content there. That's what most other games do when they run into such limitations. They find a way to upgrade their engine, or they make a sequel. And maybe these problems could be alleviated if Destiny 2's content always focused on what's ahead, not looking back very often. But the thing is, Destiny 2 relies on so much nostalgia. I mean, even look at the newest expansion coming out. Cayde 6 is a prominent part of all the marketing, which is just odd, seeing how the content which endears you to him just doesn't exist in the game anymore. So, with that, I think I've said everything I want to on this topic. I don't enjoy making negative videos all that much, but this is a topic I'm pretty passionate about. I love Destiny 2, and I think it has more potential than almost any other game I've played. I think the content vaulting is such a tragedy for that very reason. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Also, please consider pre-ordering my latest book, Storm Warning. Thanks for all the support. Until next time.